Hello everyone, welcome back to the C programming tutorials. These tutorials are brought to you by Zeedup Technologies. In the previous video, we saw all about arrays, how can we declare them, how can we initialize them, and how can we use them. So this was about the arrays, the basic about the arrays that you need to know, and in the previous video, the arrays we saw were of single dimension. Like here is the code from the previous video itself. We declare an array which will contain 3 elements. So it is of a single dimension only. Okay. Now in this video, we will see the multi-dimensional arrays in C. So multi-dimensional arrays in C. And we can just get rid of this whole code because we do not need it anymore. Now, what is a multidimensional array? A multidimensional array has more than one dimension, but the most common multidimensional array is a 2D array or a 2-dimensional array. Now, the question is, how can we declare a multidimensional array? So, the declaration of a multidimensional array is same as that of a single dimension. You need to first specify the data type with which you are going to bound your array elements with. Then the name of the array, so it is going to be ARR again. Then within square brackets, you need to specify two things. Since we are going with a 2-dimensional array, so we need to specify two things. If we would have wanted a 3D array, so we have to specify these 3 pair of square brackets or 3 dimensions, and so on for 4, 5 and up till. Now, since we are talking about 2 dimensions, so we have specified 2 pairs of these square brackets. And in these pairs, we need to provide numbers. Now, what are these numbers? This first square brackets points to the number of rows that would be contained in an array, and this second square bracket refers to the number of columns that would be present in our 2D array. So, let us create a very simple 2D array that has 3 rows and 3 columns. Okay. And then we can initialize it using the curly braces like this. Okay, now to understand the dynamics involved in a 2D array, we have created something for you. This is how a 2D array looks like. There are going to be 3 rows. So these horizontal things are known as rows, and there are going to be 3 columns, which is specified by the second square bracket, and these vertical sections are known as the columns in an array. So since we have declared an array of 3 by 3, that is 3 rows and 3 columns, so this is how it is going to look finally. What you can do is you can make out from this that the first number or the first index or the first square bracket is actually the index number of the rows, and the second is of the column. So this is the index value of row 0 and column 0, 0th row but first column, 0th row and second column, and so on. So if we declare an array of 3 rows and 3 columns, this means a total of 9 elements will be held in it. How can we make it out? By multiplying the number of rows and columns itself, that is 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2 and so on up till 2, 2. So these are the 9 elements that will be held in that array, and this is how a multi-dimensional array will look like. So let's go back to our code. Here what we are going to do is now we are going to initialize the values into this array. So this initialization is done in a row-wise fashion. If we can just write here something, if we just provide a curly braces, then inside this curly braces, whatever values we write will be a part of the row number 1. That is first row, or if we talk in terms of indexing, that is row 0. Then again, if we provide it with the curly braces, then it will hold the contents of row number 2. Row number 1 or the second row. If we are talking about index, it's going to be row 1. But if we are going to talk about the number of the rows, it's going to be the second row. And this is the third row if we're talking about the number. But if we are talking about the index, then it is going to be the row number 2. Okay, so that is the rows, and inside these rows we can provide comma separated values for the columns. So I'm going to just provide 10, 20, 30 over here. and then we are going to provide the values like 40, 50, 60, and then like 70, 80, 90. That's it. Okay, so this is how we can store the values for the variables or the different columns and rows in a 2D array. Now you can see that we have got a total of 9 values, that is from 10 to 90. This is another reason or another proof that we have filled all the values that are required in this array ARR. Now the question is, how can we access these values? To access these values, we would need more than one for loop, because one for loop can iterate only through one dimension, be it rows or columns. So for this purpose, we are going to use the concept of the nested for loop in C. Now we have already read about the nested if statements. There is another concept that is known as nested loops, which is similar as the if statements only, that is, a for loop inside a for loop is known as a nested for loop. So we will see it with the help of an example. Let's just write a comment here that it is a nested for loop. So first for loop we are going to create is going to be for rows. So let's just specify the variable as r. It is going to start from 0 and go till 12 less than equals to 2, and then r plus plus. Okay. Now inside this body of the for loop, we first need to specify another for loop. Now this for loop is going to be for the individual columns. So let's just create another for loop, and the variable that we are going to use here, the counter variable, is going to be C, because it is going to be for columns. So that's why we have used C. It is also going to be from 0 till 2 less than equals 2 and C plus plus. And inside the body of the for loop, whatever code we want, we can write it simply over here. Okay, so what is the code we want to write is we want to print these elements. Okay, so the format of the printing is that I want the name of the array, the row number, the column number, suppose 0, 1, and the value for 0, 1 is nothing but 20. So I want 20 like this. So this is the format of the output that I want over here. So let's see that how can we achieve this format. So printf statement is required, obviously, yes. Then what do we need is a \n ARR. Within the square brackets, we need two placeholders, mod D. That means that we are going to provide a row number and a column number. Then put an equal sign and the placeholder, that is again mod D, and put a comma. Now over here what we can do is we can simply write something as the values of R, comma C, comma the value of ARR enclosed with two parentheses, that is R and C. And let us just close the printf statement. So if you see the value of R, if we talk about first iteration where the value of R is 0 and the value of C is 0, it will be 0, 0. So ARR 0, 0 equals to the value of the 0th row and the 0th column, that is 10, will be printed. Next 20, next 30, and so on. So let us just try it by compiling it, building it, and running it. So there is an error was there, and the error was because of the fact that once we specify the group of these values or the group of these columns, we need to provide with a comma to separate these values like this. That is the first row, then put a comma, the second row, then again put a comma, and then the third row like this. Okay, so now if we just try to compile it and run it, then you can see that we have got all the values over here. That is for the 0th row and the 0th column, we have got the value 10. 0th row, first column, value 20. 0th row, second column, value 30. So this is about the first row. Then similarly, we have second row for the 3 values. And then we have the third row for the 3 values. So that's how it works. That's how the multidimensional arrays work in C. That is the usage of the multidimensional array, and that's how we can access the individual elements of the multidimensional arrays with the help of the nested for loop, or basically any nested loops in C. So an important usage of these multidimensional arrays, or specifically this two-dimensional array, is in the matrices. You all must have heard of matrices. If not, then matrices are basically a collection of rows and columns, and they are used to show the data. They usually find their application in mathematical calculations, where they can be used for storing numbers, and different operations such as addition, subtraction, multiplication can be performed on them. So this was all about the multidimensional arrays, and specifically the two-dimensional arrays in C, which is the simplest multidimensional array, and I hope you all have enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.